It's always our honor to welcome in WWE Hall of Famer, the one and only good old JR, Jim Ross. Welcome back to the Two-Man Power Trip.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
JR, it's always our pleasure. We'd like to thank you for your little clip you gave us for our 300th episode, but most importantly, the release of this book. It has been out. It has been just an absolute blaze all over social media with the great comments. How do you feel finally having the book come out to the masses?
Well, I'm happy that we finished the project because after my wife got killed, it was kind of maybe it was iffy, and but we finished it, and I'm very proud of that. So I think it would be a book that she would be proud of, and the feedback's been, as you said, been really good.
Feedback's been great, but I got to give you so much credit for the amount of publicity you've done for the book just in the first couple of days. I mean, it seems like every time I turn around, you are on another show, and it seems like there's never there's an endless amount of material we could talk about with you. But to talk about the work that goes into the book and all the stuff you've gone through since you started writing it, when you first put pen to paper, did you ever have the thought that down the road, there would have been so many changes in your life, but also now the positives being felt by the wrestling community to embrace this story?
Well, I've always had confidence that the wrestling community was going to be supportive of pretty much anything I did that I was really committed to. And that's been the case for many, many years. So you have the trepidation of, and maybe the egocentric vent of making sure that you write a good book and that it's received well, and that it sells and that people like it and share it and get something out of it. It's all those things. It's like writing a Broadway play or something, and you're just hoping that you can sell tickets. People come to see your play, and we're in a situation where, we hope people buy our book. And I know Amazon's been really busy and doing a good job shipping. So far so good, But in March it got to be iffy. The latter part of March, early part of April, about if we're going to be able to finish in time to make any deadline or to do it at all or whatever. So I'm really glad that we saw it through and saw our journey to the end, and now it's here, and hopefully folks are going to check it out and enjoy it.
Well, when we first started preparing to have your appearance in Philly in August, people started messaging us about the book and saying, hey, is the book going to be out? Is the book coming out by then? And at that point, I wasn't too familiar with the release date. I knew the book was being written because I'd been following what you've been talking about on your show and also on Twitter, but I didn't know when it was coming out. But then as we were in Philly and we're getting closer and closer, people were asking about the book, and they were seeing that the book was coming, and we had a big poster over there that said the book is coming in October, and now here we are again. It's out. It's finally here. And the thing that I'm so impressed by is not just the book coming out, but the fact that the audio book came out as well, because in 2017 we consume a lot of digital media. So the work you put in for the audio book, another thing I got to commend you on. How did you feel reading the book now in audio form after writing it? Now you're reading it back to yourself.
Very challenging. Very challenging. If I had known how challenging it was and had not already committed to doing it, I probably would have passed on that project. So it was really, really emotional because you're narrating your own documentary. I've already lived it. I know exactly every color we're talking about, how cold or how hot, everything. I know everything about that scene that we paint with our words because I lived it, and some of those scenes were hard to relive. So it was really challenging. I've had really good feedback from those that have bought the audio book. They could tell that it meant a lot to me, and I think that was good. So it does. So I appreciate those that listen to the audio book, and I think it's going to be. Somebody told me it was the first audio book they ever bought, and they just were very, very happy. So maybe it will motivate them to buy other audio books and expand the horizon, so to speak.
And that's what you want. You want any kind of book, whether it's audio or a physical book, you want that to inspire people to pick up more, because it's still reading might be fundamental. And everybody goes to the podcast route now, but reading is the way we get I think we get the deeper story still in the form of the book, and putting all the work you have in. One of the things I think that stands out is obviously the foreword by Vince McMahon, and you and Vince having such a long relationship and having your ups and having your downs. What did it mean for you to have Vince write the foreword for the book?
Well, he was my first choice. So he was my overall number one draft pick. So I got what I wanted, and happy to say. But he was. Somebody asked me, said, how hard was it to get Vince to do your forward? How'd you pull that off? I said I sent him a text, and he responded and said he'd be proud to do it, and so he did, and it was great. We have a lot of really cool, Stone Cold did the afterword, and we got contributions from The Rock and Coach Bob Stoops before he resigned at Oklahoma, and Billy Gibbons, the ZZ Top, Art Cuban, the other guy I work for, the other billionaire I work for. So it's a fun thing, and I think that there's a lot of life lessons in this book that it's not. One thing I can tell you, it's not a wrestling book. It's not a wrestling book. It's not JR outlines his 10 favorite matches, right? JR, whatever. My 10 favorite wrestlers, or my 10 favorite matches, the 10 matches I hated the worst, or my best draft pick, or whatever. It's not that. It's about life, and it's about. And my life is so intertwined with wrestling that almost anywhere in my journey, wrestling has embraced that aspect of my living being. So it's just a unique story, of my journey in a business that wasn't hiring. For me to get a job in wrestling, I finally figured it out. I got hired by Bill Watts at $125 a week to babysit Leroy McGurk, by and large. And knowing that was a short-term gig at very, very best, I looked around and started figuring out other things that I wanted that I might be able to do so that I could stay in the wrestling business past what I thought would be a summer job. And that's how it all started, and I kept looking for jobs and areas that I could learn in, and so I could wear more than one hat. So I think this book, unlike a lot of the other great wrestling books that are written by wrestlers who talk about wrestling and their career in the ring and so forth and so on, I talk about the business of wrestling and how a civilian like me or like you guys could theoretically go on a similar journey. Why not? Somebody is. That's the way I look at it. Somebody is. So somebody's going to write the next New York Times bestseller, and I'm hoping it's us.
And obviously the book is going to cover a lot of your life, and obviously if you want more of the wrestling stuff, you can go to your podcast, and obviously you cover more of the wrestling thing. But you mentioned Leroy McGurk and getting your first job in the business, obviously under Bill Watts. What was it like with Leroy? Because we know from some stories about him, kind of a strange guy and obviously a blind guy as well.
Yeah, Leroy didn't have any sight. He was blinded one eye as a young man, probably 8 or 10 years old, I think. Then he went on to an All-American National Championship level amateur career at Oklahoma State as a wrestler. Then he was the NWA Junior Heavyweight Champion, and legitimately one of the real tough guys, a real shooter. But they say, I never met Leroy when he had sight. He was blinded in '51. I wasn't born then, but he could be very volatile. The Leroy's issue was like a lot of guys. It's no mystery. He got overserved a lot. Like every day he drank straight whiskey. So and it was a problem, obviously. So that was that issue. But he was a really bright guy. He was the editor of the college newspaper at Oklahoma State. He was the sports editor of the paper before that. Really an academician. He graduated from college in the 30s when other wrestlers weren't. So he's very, very intelligent. But the booze was his demon. And I'm sure that I can't say I wouldn't be any different or maybe worse, that I think he was very bitter that he was sightless, because it really robbed him of his heyday there in the early 50s, because he was a major star in that junior heavyweight division, and the junior heavyweights then meant something. It's hard for fans today to look at it, because they're going to compare what I term junior heavyweights to a junior heavyweight today, or the cruiserweights, the 205s, or the whatevers, the X division. I don't know, not that doesn't apply, but you know what I mean. It's just hard to look at that, because they had such an amazing array of terrific talent, and in that category, and Leroy was the kingpin of that group. But the thing about it is, everybody also knew that even the heavyweights, there wasn't. I don't know if there's too many heavyweights that he couldn't whip. So he was very well respected within the business. And remember the NWA, very colorful character. He was a very key character in the issues that Mildred Burke had with the NWA. Her getting milked out of a bunch of money by the honorable NWA, which is a big joke. So anyway, my book's got a lot of those stories and territory stories and first time I went to a wrestling match and as a kid and who was on the card, what I remembered, working for Cowboy Leroy, being Leroy's driver. I'd never even been in a Cadillac in my life until I drove McGurk's as his chauffeur. He did ride a shotgun, so he rode in the front seat. And he always had a satchel with him, and the satchel had a lot of things in it. Had a big can for cigar ashes, cigars, whiskey, usually a handgun. So he's quite the character. So when he was sober, he was very kind to me. But it says a lot about people that drink, and that's other people have said that about others that they know. When he's sober, he's very nice to me. That's a scary thought, because there's the other side of that statement. But nonetheless, Leroy was really a unique dude, and he and Bill gave me my start. He saw something in me. I took notes at the booking meetings for Leroy, and I didn't even know what I was doing, because they were using terms I didn't know. We'll have so and so and so and so. We'll have them do we'll have them go a 10-minute Broadway. So I'm writing down 10-minute Broadway. I ain't got a clue what that means. I don't know what it means. Now you get an 8th grader who's active on social media. He can tell you as a wrestling fan, he can tell you what a Broadway is without a doubt. Different world, man.
Very
Different
true.
World.
Very true. But it is crazy to think that you were so kind of naive to the business. You're just sitting at booking meetings. You're taking notes. You don't know what things mean. And then as you follow through your journey of your life, you become basically the voice of wrestling, the greatest play-by-play announcer of all time. Is that kind of surreal to you? Kind of looking back and going through this journey, like, wow, I really came a long way. I'm basically the GOAT.
Well, thanks. I don't know about that. I think the older I get, I'd like to think that out of common sense and above average intellect that I'm slowing down a little bit to kind of stop and smell some of the roses as I buzz by. So I think it's. I've done a lot of interviews for this book. You know, I didn't. I was trying. Somebody was telling me that this year alone, just this year, I've done the main event at WrestleMania. I've done 3 of the Okada Omega matches. I've done New Japan Live in Santa Barbara, Santa Barbara, right?
Mm-hmm. Or Long Beach. Yep.
And I did arguably the match of the year with those 2 fine young British lads at the takeover of Chicago, Bate and Dunn, and I had another really a good one too that I was lucky to be a part of. So I've had an interesting year from a broadcaster standpoint, and doing, you know, having an all-star match at a NXT, having an all-star match at the event WrestleMania, having an all-star event at New Japan. It makes for an interesting year that probably other announcers haven't had, which is exciting for me because at this stage of the game, there's not too many assignments that I haven't had an opportunity to do. But something like this is a whole new presentation for me. So times are good in that regard. I enjoy my schedule, and we're gonna be doing a lot of book signings, you know, this month and coming up. So looking forward to that. And but I think this book's going to do well. I think it's going to do good. It's just from a different point of view than my peers have done before me, and it's more along the lines of trying to think if there's something close. You guys probably know better than me, but it's just not. I can't role play the athleticism, the bumps, the bruises, the pain, the agony that a wrestler endures in their job as a sports entertainer. And for me to try to simulate that in words, it would really be kind of bullshit. So therefore, I'm trying not to go there. I believe that the route we took is kind of unique because it's no one. If you look back at the history of the business, no one's had my journey. Now they may someday, but it's going to be hard because the territories are gone. So that big part of my foundation that helped me understand the art of broadcasting no longer exists. So I would then submit to the court that I'm probably the last of this breed of cat, and this journey that we're writing about is a unique one.
And one thing I had to mention, obviously, we're talking about your journey and your book and you being one of the greatest announcers of all time. I can't almost not mention the passing of Lance Russell. Did you have any sort of relationship with him being one of kind of the great announcers out there alongside with you?
Oh, we were great friends. Lance and his late wife, Audrey, and my late wife, Jan, and I were friends. We became friends largely over the filming of the Man in the Moon movie because, ironically, and don't ask me to explain it because I have no idea, in that movie, I played Lance Russell's role. Even though in the credits it didn't mention Lance Russell, me playing Lance Russell, but right down by my credit, it's got ring announcer Lance Russell. So why I didn't do the ring announcing and Lance didn't play Lance has always been a head scratcher to me. But we got to become friends a few days there in Los Angeles doing that taping, filming, whatever, and then I knew Lance at WCW when he used to be driven crazy by the Freebirds, Hayes and Garvin. And, just I'd see him here, there, and yon. But yeah, we were friends. Look, I was thinking this recently. I never ever heard a single human being utter a remotely negative remark about Lance Russell. And in life in general, that's very, very rare. In the wrestling business, it's essentially extinct. The only other person that I can think of that would fit into that same conversation, at least off the top of my head, is Owen Hart. So Lance Russell was a national treasure. He was the best weekly TV wrestling host ever, and that will ever be, because that side of the business has become a dying presentation. But what Lance did for decades and decades, with no rehearsal, with no teleprompter, with nobody in his ear feeding him lines, just freewheeling with a stick mic in a small TV studio, and got these ridiculous ratings that you think they're typos. So Lance is the best ever at his role, without a doubt. Nobody's even going to come. I don't know how they would ever come close. I think he's got that one cornered. But the big thing for me was that Lance was a gentleman and just a class act. Golly, just what a wonderful guy. And I was so happy. I put on my Twitter. I sent a tweet out that a picture that someone took of us on my camera at the Cauliflower Alley Club with Jerry the King and Lance and I. That's a picture I really embrace, And so Lance was Lawler will tell you, that as big as Lawler got, there was nothing ever bigger than Jerry Lawler in Memphis, ever. But there would have been no King if there wasn't Lance. And I think that's just a classy thing for Jerry to say, but he's right on the money. Lance was the lyricist for all that crazy music that they wrote in Memphis all those years. And somehow Lance made sense out of it enough to motivate you to either, one, buy a ticket, or two, be sure and tune in again next week. Because we, again, will try to sell you a ticket. And somewhere along the way, if we're persistent enough and you watch enough and get hooked on the storylines, guess what? You're going to buy a ticket. So he was classic. He was classic. It's something. I don't know how readily available they are. Some of that really cool stuff from the Memphis studio. You guys know that better than I. I don't think that's a WWE network library acquisition. I don't know that. Maybe I'm wrong.
Nope, not yet. Nope.
So yeah. So, but if people that listen, you have a few minutes, maybe hop on YouTube or something for Lance Russell and his interactions with everybody. Again, understand these are not. They didn't walk through this earlier in the day. They're not working off cue cards or prompters, as I mentioned. There's an art form of doing all this and disseminating data like Monday at the Coliseum or next Friday in Nashville or wherever it may be. So there's a method to the madness, but nobody herded the chickens and kept the rudder in the water like Lance Russell. He was just the very best.
Now, one last question for me before I pass it along over to Chad and we wrap it up. And I just had to ask this because Triple H and WWE and NXT recently have announced that they're bringing back War Games, and obviously War Games pretty damn well. About War Games, maybe wanting to announce it, or did you kind of give any thought, or did you even hear about War Games coming back?
I heard, I saw a WWE .com thing, bulletin. I'm trying to think, lost for words, and I was happy. It's a neat hook to build around for the NXT takeover. It's a very marketable tool, and that's how I look at it. It's got name identity with some older wrestling fans. The name has been bantied about some to the younger fans. It's kind of trickled down. War Games has got a little bit of a legacy. If it's, I don't know exactly the structure of it, but I can just tell you that if it's executed correctly, it can really be special. And I thought over the years, and maybe it's just my own bias, but I thought in the early going of the War Games, we had better matches than they subsequently got at the end of the War Games. And I may be, again, biased and wrong, but that's my take on it. So it's really a committed effort by the talents. The talents got to fit the environment, but the concept is really unique. It's very nostalgic in a good way, I think. It's kind of like the WWE having a Starrcade event in Greensboro. That's kind of cool. And even though I don't think it's going to be televised, it's got people talking about a live event. So I kind of think it served its purpose. And it's very nostalgic, and the fans in that area should get some enjoyment out of it. I understand there's going to be some extra whistles and bells there, so I think that's a neat idea. So I kind of look at the same glasses at the Starrcade as I do the War Games. It's nostalgic, got some name identity. It's nice to see it back. Not something I probably want to see every year. And the other thing is that previous War Games, some of them have been very violent. And that doesn't seem to be in vogue these days. So, and that's not a bitch from my end, but just saying that, if everybody thinks it's going to be a War Games like it used to be in the old days, that's probably not. But that doesn't mean it can't be better and certainly different. So I'm open-minded. I'm glad that the basic canvas is there, called the War Games. Now let's see where they take it, and I'm curious. And I'm certainly, I'm sure that even my busy book signing schedule, if I was needed in Houston for NXT Takeover, that would be I would be certainly make myself available. But it's been good. The response has been good. The only negative, I made a mistake going on and looking at some feedback, and I saw one negative feedback on Slobber Knocker, and that was the fact that I didn't, for the lack of a better term, dish enough dirt on. They wanted more salacious material, and so I guess someday I have to write a R-rated version of my life. They don't understand. I got children. I got granddaughters here. I think there's a better way to. My story's not. That's not my story. That's not my journey. My journey wasn't then. There's plenty of that on it, but not for this forum. But anyway, it's the funny stuff. Some good stuff in there, and I had another guy write me that said he was reading our book. He read it, got finished with it, and by the time he got through, he had laughed, and he had cried, and he had gasped, and he had to set it down once, and like he really got into it. So to know that some of the things we write about as honestly as we humanly possibly can write, not reinventing the past, is being well received, and that's pretty damn cool. And like I said, it's so much of my life and my work was involved with Jan and my wife, and she was with me from the met in the WCW days. We got married in my first year. I was in WWE. We were together all through that whole run. Me going to the Hall of Fame, everything. Moving back to Oklahoma, slowing down a little bit, and then boom, it's over. So that book has got so much of her in it because she played a role. I didn't go create material to put in there because I want to pledge, JR's wife dies. They had to put some more material in her book about her. Not at all. It's just there. And when you read it, you'll see what I'm saying. It makes a lot of us guys stop and reevaluate our relationships. You read it and you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. So it's a pretty, it's not just a headlock and hammerlock book by any means.